Well, the Republican primary turning into Survivor. That when Ted Cruz and John Kasich form an alliance to take down the Donald. The question is, can they do it, or will Trump thump him in 5 key primaries tomorrow and close things out? Then Hillary will try to close out Bernie tomorrow night as well. But can she bring the party together is the question and win over his supporters? It's a huge issue that could decide the election come November. Also, the rest of our interview with legendary singer and songwriter Carole King. Last time we spoke about the support of Hillary Clinton. This time we'll talk about things that she's just as passionate about, and of course, that famous night in D.C. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, tomorrow, it's a big day on the political calendar. 5 states holding primaries, and they're all in the East. Both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump expected to have big nights, if you believe the polls. 172 Republican delegates, they're up for grabs. Trump expected to pad his lead and get closer to the magic number of 1,237 needed delegates for the nomination. Now, Ted Cruz and John Kasich, they've decided, even if they're not always politically on the same page, that maybe they're better off banding together. They're doing just that and will try to divide and conquer. Cruz focusing on Indiana, while Kasich devotes his time to Oregon and New Mexico. Trump still isn't impressed. Take a listen.
In politics, because it's a rigged system, because it's a corrupt enterprise, in politics, you're allowed to collude. So they colluded, and actually I was happy because it shows how weak they are. It shows how pathetic they are.
All right, let's bring on our panel and discuss weak and pathetic. Not Jeanne Zaino, of course, though. She's a professor of political science and Iona College, and she's also a professor of campaign management at NYU, and she's grieving Tom Brady's 4-game suspension. Yes. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, he with the purple tie, as he remembers the late Prince. Shays, former Republican congressman from Connecticut, here, sans tie, who is working the great state of Connecticut for his good friend John Kasich, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, and he and I get ready as our teams move on to the second round in the NHL playoffs. All right, so explain to me, you know better, you're not telling state secrets. Apparently, both campaigns and both candidates, Cruz and Kasich, not big fans of each other. This seems to be a marriage out of necessity, but the math doesn't make sense to me. Don't they want to basically make sure that they, between the two of them, get as many delegates as possible?
Yeah, it's a winner-take-all in Indiana, and therefore they want Trump under 50. So they're hoping that Cruz can beat him in Indiana. That'll be tough. But total winner-take-all. In other states, you know, they get some. If they have the more than 50, they get the statewide delegates, and then they do it by congressional districts and the others. So Connecticut will be congressional districts, Maryland will be congressional districts, and then a few statewide. But you know, it's not corrupt. What I think is corrupt is that a billionaire can come and buy an election. That, to me, is what's corrupt. But it's fascinating how he can turn it around.
But this is a really good plan a month and a half ago.
That's
I mean,
true.
isn't it just
That's
way
right.
too late in the calendar for this to really make the difference that
Way
they need?
too late is a strong word. It is late. Gosh.
And keep in mind, the states that vote tomorrow are not included in this grand bargain. They're not divvying up the same way for
in
the
fact,
state.
we were asked, like, John Kasich, what would you say to a Kasich supporter in Indiana? He goes, vote for me.
Yeah.
You know, so, Jeanne, Trump's answer to this point that the system's rigged. Now, to the congressman's point, it seems to be making the argument when it's convenient for him, but nonetheless, it seems to be working. Can he make the argument to folks here on the eve of tomorrow that, see, yet again, these guys with their backroom deals trying to do everything to thwart the will of the public, will that play, I was going to say in Peoria, but will that play in the 5 states here where they'll say that Donald's onto something?
Yeah, first of all, let me say, in that speech you played from Rhode Island, he first of all mentioned Tom Brady and how we should all give him a break. So I want to give him kudos for that.
He also did talk about the eating.
Why do you think he did that? So he could be in the news.
I think from his heart, Representative, he cares.
About the Patriots?
Like we all do.
The
Like,
Patriots?
please, it's Tom, poor Tom. But to your point, you know, I do think it's a message that's going to play. You know, this is, you look at the polls and what do they say? 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 Republicans who have voted in these primaries say the person who gets the most votes, not the majority, but the most votes, should be the nominee. And he is going to keep.
Where did you say that?
In the polls, if you look at the polls of Republicans. Right. And so, you know, he is going to keep playing on that, and he should politically. Right. Now, to the congressman's point, you know, rules are rules. You got to get to 1237 to win this thing on the first ballot. But what politician, and he is a politician, obviously, in their right mind is going to give up on a winning argument? He's got a winning argument here, and he's going to push it to the end, and at the same time, he's going to push to make sure he can get to 1237, because they know if he doesn't get this thing on a first ballot, he's in a lot of hot water. And that's precisely why Cruz and Kasich have colluded together, as he says, come together. They want to go to a contested convention because both parties believe, or both camps believe, that if they get there and hold him off on the first ballot, they have a chance of winning this thing.
I'm not as sure as I was before about that, Dom, which was they can't stand what Trump has done, or maybe even fear what he will do to their party as the nominee. But there are so many conflicting signals. Whatever people think of Fox News, to anyone debate about its influence and importance on the conservative voices in this country would be naive. I mentioned before, you have Murdoch breaking bread with Trump. You have the host from Megyn Kelly, for crying out loud, to obviously Hannity being accused of being in the pocket of Trump and the rest, they being supportive. You have Paul Ryan saying no white knight should be coming into Cleveland. If you didn't run, you shouldn't be, eligible in his eyes to be the candidate. You've had other Republicans, notable Republicans, saying, you know what? If he's close enough, like Rudy Giuliani, if he's within 50 votes of it or whatever, he should get it anyway. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion if he doesn't make the number that they'd really be that much more comfortable going with Ted Cruz and all the backlash they'd engender.
I don't see any possible scenario where, they can avoid Mr. Trump. He is leading, and no offense to your candidate, John Kasich, but I want to know who's coming up with these strategies. And Andrew was right. What is the saying?
We're almost in May. Yeah.
I mean, you came up with this strategy. Oh, hey, let's collude together, and it's not going to work. All you're going to do is energize his base. It's over, Richard.
Well, they
He's
apparently,
going
to
get
Dom's
the
point,
nomination.
Chris, a month and a half they were talking about doing this kind of arrangement. But there was so much friction between the two camps, and I think major policy divides between Cruz and also Kasich.
I think what happened afterwards, I don't think they thought that he would win New York outright. And I think that was...
Seriously, Congressman?
Yeah, seriously.
Or at least to the
Any New Yorker could have told you. You don't have to hire the big consultants. Any New Yorker could have said...
I'm just telling you, they didn't think that he would get 60% of the vote.
Wow.
But the real change in all of this is that after New York, it became mathematically impossible for Cruz to win the necessary delegates to win the nomination on his own. No, he probably wasn't going to, but as long as he was still in the running, as long as he wasn't knocked out of contention, he was mathematically eligible to win the nomination. Now after New York, he can't get there, so that's why all of a sudden they're coming up with this deal.
We have to be realistic about this. You had a better chance of getting the nomination than Ted Cruz did. I'm talking about the first ballot here.
So a better chance of winning the nomination than Rich does.
Not in New York, Andrew. All right,
No, but let's see one thing though. If Trump is 150 delegates behind and he doesn't win on the first in the first vote, he will not win. He's not going to get more votes in the second ballot.
Well,
why
are you so sure of that?
Because there are too many people who don't like him, even on his own side. So he's got to win it outright. If he loses votes in the second, he's not going to then come back on the third.
Okay, but here's my question, and I've heard a lot of people say that as well. It just seems to me, kind of like we could have told everyone a couple weeks ago, New York was not going to go well. Kasich was the only one with a chance to peel off a few. Cruz should not have even bothered coming to New York. Everybody can say, when he's in Cleveland, if the perception, with even a little bit of reality, is that Trump gets maneuvered in a backroom deal, the outrage that will pour out of this.
It won't be a backroom deal. It will be delegates up front deciding they don't want him. Why will they not want him? We're going to lose the Senate race in New Hampshire. If you saw, Trump was 35 to Clinton's 50 in New Hampshire. That's what he was. She can't win. The Republican senator cannot win. Portman can't win in Ohio. So what you're going to have are people just saying, I don't want to lose the Senate.
I'm with you. I'm trying to say something different, see if you guys agree with me. I'm telling you viscerally, what I've heard in the last 3 weeks, people I never in my lifetime would think would even want to associate Trump with their name, that they're grudgingly willing to accept it. And the idea, more importantly, that somehow he's this outside candidate, but they believe it. I'm telling you, I think there will be rage if in Cleveland, even if he doesn't get to the magic number, even if they play by the rules, even if they get to a second ballot and go, or a third ballot and go to a different direction, which I know is totally within the rules, there'll be a perception that they, in effect, rigged the system, they screwed Trump, and none of those people are going to come back in November.
Let's do the reverse. The reverse is he has a 60 to 70% unfavorable. That means you got to get 100% of all the favorables, and then you got to switch a whole bunch of unfavorables.
But that doesn't presuppose they loved Ted Cruz. And I yet to have known someone in this metropolitan area who can say that.
Well, but let's also, to the congressman's point, remember what Koch said this weekend, which
I'm going to get to that. Don't jump ahead. That's my second segment.
I'm sorry, Richard. I know it's your show.
There.
But I won't get to that. But let me just say, the Republicans also have a real fear that they are going to have funders leaving the party, or at least not funding them. And then how do they keep the Senate? How do they maintain their lead in the House? What do they do about that? So, delegates
You've done so much TV now. You just gave me a segue. Thank you very much.
Well, I did that for you,
I
Richard.
know, because you care.
I
and care's
care.
not a four-letter word for you. When we come back.
I think it was collusion.
Me too. There you go. Word of the day. When conservative mega donor Charles Koch says he will close his wallet and might even pick Hillary Clinton. Charles Koch saying this over the Republican eventual nominee. You know things are bad in the GOP. We'll get into that after this.